thank you very much indeed for that welcome, and thank you everyone for coming this morning. I know it has been a full-on conference, and I hope everyone's having fun, finding it interesting. I'd like to begin, obviously, by thanking Victoria and Paul and the army of Contact in the Desert volunteers, all the people doing the AV, the admin, everything, without whom this fabulous event couldn't take place. So thanks to them, and thanks to you all for coming. I don't know how many of you have been to Contact in the Desert before, or how many of you are newbies, but I have been going as a speaker pretty much for as long as the event has run. And of course, I started off when they had their home at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center, an amazing location. I loved it, full of character. Sadly, the conference outgrew the venue. There were hundreds more people wanted to come than could be accommodated. So they are now in this new home, and I think obviously if they had to move anywhere, this is a great place to be. And as I said yesterday, I'm not just saying that. For those of you who don't know, although I'm a Brit, I've actually lived in the United States for a number of years now. I moved over in January 2012. We split our time between San Jose, where my wife is a professor at the university, but our main residence is Tucson, Arizona. So when I say I like the desert, I'm not kidding you. We live in the desert. We have 3.5 acres, and really the only difference between the view from our place and the view from the hotel window here is that we have saguaro cacti and not palm trees, but the temperature is about the same. In fact, I'm probably one of the few people who comes here and I say, it's a little bit cooler here than it is back home. So, but I know there are a lot of people from Canada and who've come down from like Illinois and Minnesota and the Dakotas and things, so I guess it's pretty warm for you people. Anyway, I am going to make this a proper workshop. So this is not going to be me just talking at you for 2 hours. I'd like to make it more interactive. I'd like to make it almost like a conversation. Certainly I'm going to do Q&A at the end, but I would actively encourage you, and I'm not just saying this, if you hear something you disagree with, shout out. If you have a question, throw it into the mix. Be disruptive, be subversive. You know, it's a small, intimate group. It's a Sunday morning. We can have a little fun with this. I think, I have heard some amazing presentations, but I think what I have learned, particularly from some of the panels that I've been on, is when you all have a chance to chip in and share your thoughts and your experiences and such like, people appreciate that, I think, even more. I was on the government disclosure panel yesterday, and Steve Bassett basically went straight to questions, so that the audience had a chance to say, well, this is what's on my mind. And I'd like to make this workshop the same. The other reason is I very much doubt this is going to be 2 hours worth of material, so I would actively encourage us to be interactive and also to go off topic. I mean, if you know, for example, if you've just seen me on Ancient Aliens say something and you think, well, that's not really aliens and religion, doesn't matter. Shout it out. Say, hey, Nick, what about Rendlesham Forest? Or hey, Nick, what's going on with the British government declassifying and releasing these files? So let's be interactive like that. And I haven't got a prize for the first person that shouts anything out, but you will get the kudos of being the person who who kind of kick-started the conversation. For those of you that don't know, just to say a little bit more about my background, I worked for the Ministry of Defence in the UK for 21 years. The Ministry of Defence is the equivalent of your DoD here, so it is both a policy-making Department of State with the Defence Secretary at the helm, but it's also the UK's highest level military headquarters. I was a civilian employee, but we were a whole bunch of different people, civilians, military police, intelligence people, all in the same building, kind of working for the common aim of the MOD. And as I say, I did 21 years there. They moved you around every 3 or 4 years. You move either on promotion or level transfer. I did about 7 or 8 different jobs in that time period, including 2 secondments into the Air Force operations room in the Joint Operations Center during the first Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War, and then in the Kosovo War. So I'd done a number of different things, and in January of 1991, just as the land war in the Persian Gulf War started, I was in the Air Force ops room. I was working to a particular manager, and he said, after everyone goes back to their normal jobs, I have a vacancy coming up, and I understand that you're due for a move. And I said, that's correct, yes. What's the job? And he said, UFOs. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, I'd like you to come and do that particular job. And I was like, okay. I knew that the Ministry of Defence had that post because one of the things that every Ministry of Defence employee had was the telephone directory. The telephone directory was literally that thick. It was itself a classified document because it had some information about everyone's job titles. So it would have things like, radar and imagery analysis, Soviet desk, or intelligence gathering on China tank capabilities, whatever it might be. And leafing through this directory when I joined in 1985, like all new recruits, I was like, well, I wonder what interesting jobs there are that I might get. And by chance, I just turned one page under the Division Secretariat Air Staff, and it just said UFOs. And that's all it said. Even in this classified telephone directory with the detailed job descriptions, everyone else had lots of details. You're dealing with briefings for the Secretary of State and other defense ministers, going to Air Force bases, or you're dealing with updating the NATO war books and the war plans, and you're dealing with the political and other aspects of military aircraft accidents. UFOs. That's all it said. I was like, okay. I said yes. I mean, I had, I think, done a good job on this secondment. I was seconded down there because you needed to have had briefing experience, and you needed to have a exceptionally high security clearance, top secret SCI, sensitive compartmentalized information. You were dealing with real-time information about the military campaign to kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. And it was literally, you would get flash signal traffic in, Scud launch detected, estimated target, interception, whatever. So it was pretty scary stuff. And as I say, I think I had done a fairly good job of impressing that manager. We did 12 hours on, 12 hours off for a week. Then we stood down, got a bit of rest, and then we came back and we did 12 hours on, 12 off, but the other way, so you would go on to the night shift if you'd done days and things like that. I could give a whole presentation about all the other things I've done in the Ministry of Defense that have nothing to do with UFOs, but I'll leave that for another day. I retired, by the way. I left in 2006. My final. I'm just doing this to give you a bit of flavor and color before we get into the religious stuff. But my final posting was to the Directorate of Defense Security, and I retired as a acting deputy director there with responsibility for military policing issues. And I got to go out to places like Kosovo and Iraq, or as we say in the UK, Kosovo and Iraq. Forgive the pronunciation. But, and that was quite interesting. As a civvy, you can't be sent out to Iraq. You have to volunteer to go out to Iraq. And they said, oh, don't worry. You know, whenever you go out there, if you're going anywhere off base, you'll be in an armored military convoy. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So I'm there one day at Basra Air Base, and we have to go to one of Saddam Hussein's old palaces in downtown Basra, or wherever it was. And some guys turn up and they say, Mr. Pope, yeah, who are you guys? And I'm like, they're like, we're your armored convoy. And I look and I see a couple of Land Rovers, and I'm like, where's the rest of you? Like, where are those Warrior armored personnel carriers and those Challenger 2 main battle tanks and things like that? And it's like, no, this is it. I'm like, okay. But no, they were really good. The force protection people were really, really good. So anyway, I just to take it back, I said, yeah, I'll take that UFO job. And I was a little bit nervous about it because I think, like most people in the Ministry of Defense, I wanted, I was in the junior managerial grade at the time, and I wanted the posts that the high flyers got. And the high flyers always tried to go for the job in the private office of the Secretary of State for Defense or the Minister of State for the Armed Forces. And you always wanted to be an APS, an Assistant Private Secretary. And that you wouldn't have much more responsibility than running the minister's diary or dealing with the parliamentary liaison. But the fact that you were in that kind of post meant that you could pretty much pick your next job, which was almost certainly going to be on promotion. So the real high flyers got those jobs. And sadly, I never got that job. But, I got the UFO job. But what the heck? It changed my life forever, opened my mind and my eyes to all sorts of fantastic new information and possibilities. So I'm glad that I got that and not running the visit program for the defense secretary or whatever. So let's kick into aliens and religion. Where is my thing? Okay, that picture, by the way, is of me 10 years ago. I think there should be a prize given to the speaker that gets away with using the oldest publicity picture. It takes a little bit of chutzpah, doesn't it? I mean, that was taken in about 2004, 2005, so I'm pushing it a bit. That's what, 12, 13, 14 years ago that picture was taken. My goodness, I'm not the worst offender. Some people, you'd think they were about 12 looking at their promo shots. I'm naming no names. But it's like, hey, that's not you. That's you 20 years ago. My hair has got a little lighter since then. Thank you, and thank you for being the first one to interject. You get the prize, which is, as I say, just the kudos. But thank you. That's me in front of the Jodrell Bank radio telescope near Manchester in England. And for those that don't know, something very interesting is happening at Jodrell Bank. And forgive me for going completely off topic, but what the hell? It's a small, intimate audience, and I can do what I like. So, as can you. The square kilometre array radio telescope is going to be the largest and most powerful radio telescope ever constructed. It's going to be spread over different locations, even South Africa, Australia. If there are other civilizations out there, certainly in our corner of the galaxy, the SKA may well be the thing that finds them. And you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, why use radio astronomy to look for aliens out there when they're coming down here? Well, if they're coming down here, but the government isn't telling you, don't we want a way that we can just switch on a piece of scientific equipment and everyone will know, hey, there are other civilizations out there? And the square kilometer array might just be the thing that will do it. And the headquarters is going to be at Jodrell Bank in the UK. And construction is going to begin next year. They have a website, just Google square kilometer array. Construction will not, this is such a major engineering project, and the tech is so new, so powerful, so sophisticated, that construction probably won't be completed till 2029 or 2030, but it should, if all goes to plan, and yes, they still need funding for this, it's an international collaboration, but few things could be more impactful than finding definitive proof for everyone, not just the elite, that we're not alone in the universe, that I think this will get funded. Someone like Yuri Milner or Elon Musk or Paul Allen, who's already funded part of the SETI program, for example, someone like that will chip in, and because it's going to be the ultimate game-changing revelation, the person that makes that discovery and is behind it and actually announces it in a verifiable way for everyone to know, that person is going to write their name in the history books. And whoever that is, you know, it's high stakes. And the square kilometer array is worth following, I think, as something to keep your eye on as it develops. As is another mission that's underway at the moment. And for those of you I'm not really into all this symbolism stuff. It's not my field of expertise. But for those of you who appreciate symbolism and the idea that the powerful, the elite, the Illuminati kind of occasionally play little jokes, word games, symbolism, imagery, there's a mission underway at the moment called Osiris Rex. And again, you can Google that. But Osiris Rex is basically, it launched a couple of years ago, and it's one of these missions to land a probe on an asteroid, to take a sample and to bring it back to Earth. So the R in Osiris, I think, stands for return. The I stands for the O, pardon me, stands for origins. So what they are telling you is that this is about human origins, potentially. And they're going to bring back this sample, and as I say, the mission is called Osiris Rex. Osiris is our king, maybe someone is saying. Osiris is our god. So again, Google square kilometer array, have a look at that. Google Osiris Rex, and take a look at some of that. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening right now. Okay, a warning for you. You cannot get into any discussion. I mean, it's like, what is the old country song? Politics, religion, and her. You know, it's like, you cannot get into any discussion about religion without offending someone. You know, Christian, Muslim, Mormon, Jew, Hindu, Sikh, pagan, agnostic, atheist, you know, whatever you are, whoever you are, Church of the Spaghetti Monster. I think that is a thing. Right? Yeah, Pastafarian. but yes.
Okay, so I watch a lot of aliens. I've seen you on there a lot. I know you have a vast amount of knowledge, especially from your ministry and position. Are some of these things are you allowed to speak about some of the items you talk about? How does that work? Is there things that you can't say?
Yes, good Good question. I signed my secrecy oath on my first day in government service, which is, I think, May 8th, 1985, something like that. It's called the Official Secrets Act, and it's almost a piece of catch-all legislation which says you really can't discuss anything. And then on my last day of government service, I signed a reminder form reminding me that the Official Secrets Act binds me for life. The only reason that I can come out and talk about these sorts of things is that the British government is itself in the process of declassifying and releasing its UFO files. I'm not a whistleblower. I am talking, I hope, as someone who can give a bit of an insider perspective on material that the British government is itself releasing and declassifying. But if they haven't declassified it, I'm not going to discuss it. I know where the line is, and I'm not going to cross it. This is where I probably disagree with people like Danny Sheehan and some of the other people. I don't actually support whistleblowing. I don't. I'll tell you why. Most times when you get a whistleblower, that person is not the information owner or the information holder. In government, in the world of information security, there is a subject matter expert, your SME, and your information owner. And then there's the information holder, which is basically, as it says on the label, it's just whoever has that information. Most times when you get a whistleblower, what you have is somebody who has access to that information, but they're not necessarily the subject matter expert. They are not the information owner. So they see something and they think, hey, the American people need to know about this. And then they kind of leak it. And I'm talking about the sort of people like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, and in the UK, David Shayler, Richard Tomlinson. Those people are real whistleblowers. And I'm going to say something else about real whistleblowers and fake whistleblowers in a minute, which is going to be a little bit controversial. So bear with me. But unless you are the subject matter expert, you can't do the damage assessment. When government declassifies and releases information, it does a damage assessment. And it says, what would be the adverse consequences of releasing this information? The good consequences are open government, freedom of information, people's right as taxpayers and as people who hold, hopefully, their elected leaders to account. The good side of this is that it brings what we've funded. I mean, we've paid for everything. When government does something, we've paid for it. You know, every time you watch the news and you see about some big project and you think, gosh, I wonder who's going to pay for that. Well, the answer is we pay for it. We the people. But the adverse side of that is that when you release something to the American people, you don't just release it. Once it's out, it's out. You can't get the genie back into the bottle. And everything that goes onto the internet and gets leaked by whistleblowers doesn't just go to the American people with their right to know. It goes to the Russians. It goes to the Chinese. It goes to the Iranians, the North Koreans. It goes to ISIS. It goes to all sorts of... It goes to anyone and everyone. So that's why I say, yes, there is a place for whistleblowing in any free, open, democratic society, and there's a process for people in the system that see something they think is unconstitutional, illegal, immoral, unethical, whatever it is. There's a process for those people to take it up with people in the system but independent from the chain of command. And generally those people are pretty good. But I do not support people saying, oh, hell, I'll just put it on the internet. I've seen stuff on WikiLeaks which could get people killed by disclosing things like methods and sources of gathering intelligence, strategy, tactics, doctrine for military operating in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. So I think, you know, I don't have much sympathy for the whistleblowers who put that information out there and then some young kid who's out on a tour of duty in Iraq kind of gets, Afghanistan or wherever, gets killed because one of the bad guys has read something about how we do our military convoys in Afghanistan. So, a lot of people here support whistleblowing, and okay, feel free to disagree with me on this, but I'm just saying that there is a flip side to it. So to answer your question, I know where the line is. I don't cross the line. I don't divulge classified information, and I'm only talking about this because the government is itself declassifying and releasing a lot of this material. And you can go to the MOD website, the National Archives website in the UK. We told Parliament, the media, and the public that the UFO topic was of limited interest and no defense significance. Well, guess what? So far, it's been a 10-year program to get all this declassified, and around 60,000 pages of documents, some of which were formerly classified secret UK eyes only, have now been put out there on the internet. Some of it blacked out, but 60,000 pages, not bad for a subject which we told people was of very little interest. I said I was going to say something controversial about whistleblowers, real whistleblowers versus fake whistleblowers. There are a lot of people in this subject who say things like, I worked at Area 51, I was in a secret underground base, I've worked with the aliens, I've teleported to Mars with President Obama, I've been on the Mars colony, I've been on the secret space program. Well, in intelligence analysis, there's an old saying, there's an old joke that when you get an assessment, 99 times out of 100, you're only, as an intelligence person, getting this, you write, interesting if true. And I listen to a lot of people in this field, underground bases, autopsies, secret space programs, teleportation to Mars, colonies on the moon, and I just say, interesting if true. Trust but verify. And ask yourselves this: what happens to a real whistleblower? What happens when somebody leaks genuinely classified information? I mean, someone like Snowden or Manning. I'll tell you what happens. The full resources of the criminal justice system come down on that person to try and hunt them down, get them into a court, maybe put them in jail after due process if there's a guilty verdict. Every time genuine classified information is leaked, that's what happens. The state goes after them. So when you get these people saying, I worked on secret space programs and Mars colonies and teleportation and alien autopsies, if any of that's true, why aren't they going after those people? Might the answer be because it's not true? Because some of them, sad to say, are just making it up. So, trust but verify. Everything that I'm telling you, I'm trying to give references as I go along and say, check it out for yourselves. You can phone up the Ministry of Defense press office and say, hey, did you have this, maverick guy called Nick Pope doing your UFO job? And they'll say, yes, we did. And it's out there, on the website of British Parliament and stuff like that. Let's get into some religious stuff. Yes?
Could I just ask you that 60,000 pages, do you think the UK has released more about this subject than the United States?
Well, the United States has, to be fair. There's sometimes there's a slight irritation to me that people say Britain has disclosed, France has disclosed, Norway has disclosed, Brazil, New Zealand. When is America going to do it? When's the United States going to do it? Well, the US has, to be fair, already released a vast amount of information. It's quite old, Project Blue Book archive, but, and there's a lot of aircraft lights and weather balloons and misidentifications of the planet Venus, but there is some really good stuff in the Project Blue Book archive. So the US has disclosed some information, but of course, just recently in the last literally few months, there has of course been a game-changing revelation about what's been going on in the US. I'm talking, of course, about ATIP, the Pentagon's UFO project. For years, the US government told Congress and the media and the public, okay, we had this thing called Project Blue Book, we've released the archive, but there's no current interest in UFOs, and nobody within the US government is currently investigating this. Wrong. New York Times, December 16th, 2017, ran front page story saying the Pentagon did indeed have this program, ATIP, variously described as either Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program or Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. We're not even 100% sure of the name. Luis Elizondo has said it's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The Pentagon spokesperson, because of course the New York Times had to fact check this, they said it's aviation. But of course the fact that a Pentagon spokesperson acknowledged that the Times had this story right is a game changer. And that's why this subject is now out of the fringe into the mainstream, being discussed in the Times, the Post, CNN, Fox, NBC, ABC, whatever floats your boat. It's now out there. So, I think this is good news. People, maybe last year at Contact in the Desert, if you went back to your friends, your family, your place of work, and they said, hey, what did you do over the weekend? And you said, I went to a UFO conference. They probably said, hey, you don't believe that kind of nonsense, do you? You regarded maybe as the wacky people. Well, now it turns out, courtesy of the New York Times and the Washington Post, you are simply the people who were right. So well done. You're the people who were right about this. The government really was investigating this. There were cases in the files, Navy jets. You've seen the videos, I'm sure. Navy F-18 Super Hornets chasing something, trying to lock on with their radar. We've seen it. We've had some of the people involved with the program, like Luis Elizondo, speaking out about it quite openly. He hasn't been arrested yet. He knows where the line is. No, he's a good guy. He knows where the line is, and he's not crossing it either. He takes his security oath seriously, as do I. He's said that his aim, now he's out of government, is to kickstart a conversation with the American people about this. He wants to have a conversation about this. Let's not anymore say UFOs, oh, that's just crazy stuff. No. It's stuff that involved the Navy, the intelligence community, the government, the Pentagon, DIA, CIA, whoever it is. And to go back to your question about archives and release, the next phase of this is going to be the challenge to see, well, okay, the Pentagon confirmed to the New York Times in running that story that, yes, there was a program. So let's now try and get the documents that they have. So far, we've not seen much. We've seen 3 videos. We've seen a couple of technical reports that were written maybe by a contractor, maybe by someone at the Pentagon. We don't know 100% sure. But if ATIP was a thing, and by the way, the latest news about ATIP is that even that might not be the name. It may be ORSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program. And notice, by the way, the T, if it's ATIP, the T stands for threat. And there's a reason for that. Government views UFOs like it views anything else in terms of what is the threat and what is the opportunity. Is this good news or is this bad news? I would love to believe that any extraterrestrials that we might interact with, I would love to believe that they are benign and that they're going to welcome us into the Galactic Federation, if there is such a thing, and share their scientific and technical knowledge with us and usher us into a new age. I would love to believe that. But it might not be true. As above, so below. We look at people on earth. There are good people, there are bad people. There are altruistic people and there are selfish, evil people. And I suspect we will find, as we take our first steps out into the wider universe, that, as I say, as above, so below. There's probably a whole... Look, there's not just going to be... People say, what are the aliens like? And I'm like, what do you mean, the aliens? You think there's just one other civilization out there? If we're not alone in the universe, the chances of there being just two civilizations are as staggeringly small as the chance of there being just one, i.e. us. So if we find aliens, it's not just going to be one other planet orbiting one other star. And thus, we may find good aliens, bad aliens, aliens with a technological level less advanced than us, and aliens with a technology way ahead of us. We can get into some of that later, and I covered some of that in my lecture yesterday. Alien tech is an interesting thing. But just to round off that point about disclosure of documents, there are, I understand from various journalists and researchers, there are currently, I think, over 3,000 FOI requests in the system relating to ATIP. And some of them have come back no records. That may be because the name's wrong. As I say, maybe it's ORSAP and not ATIP. And maybe they're targeting the wrong agency. Some of the responses suggest that substantive replies to Freedom of Information Act requests about ATIP may not be made until 2019 or 2020. The government is struggling with this one, I tell you. They're in a fix. They were not happy when news of this came out. So we've had the Project Blue Book archive, and I recommend that to you. It's quite old, but there are some great cases in there. But watch out for the ATIP document dump when that comes. That kind of almost flows from what I was saying about it being likely that we share this universe with other civilizations, and probably a vast number of them. Astronomers can't really agree on how many stars there are even in our one galaxy. Estimates range between 100 billion and 400 billion. Just vast amounts, and the number of other galaxies. And you figure that each galaxy is hundreds of billions of stars, and then there are hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe. As Douglas Adams wrote in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, space is big. And in relation to religion, they had this kind of ties in the idea: is there or is there not anything special and unique about Earth? Is Earth the center of the universe, created by a god? Or is it just a fairly ordinary planet orbiting a fairly ordinary sun, and actually there's nothing special about us at all? And this kind of one world or many worlds debate has been going on in philosophy and religion for hundreds and hundreds of years, and the kind of Aristotle mode of the view of Earth as some center of the cosmos, and then the old idea that the Earth was it, and everything else revolved around the Earth. And of course, people were burnt at the stake sometimes for suggesting otherwise. And then the science came in, and religions have to adapt and evolve in the light of this. And we can get into, and we'll be getting into, the whole conflict between science and religion and things. But even within religions, there has been a debate about this for some time, and some religious people certainly said that they didn't have a doctrinal problem with ideas. And you know, you can go, I think in the Quran, for example, there's a reference to many worlds and seventh heaven and things like that, and all sorts of things in the Bible, which we can get into later as well. So some religions have these hints, if you can call them that, in the texts about the many worlds scenario. So there doesn't seem to be any fundamental religious objection to the idea that there might be many worlds and other life. And perhaps it was Jose Gabriel Funes who said it best and most recently in May 2008. And Funes was the previous director of the Vatican's observatory. Yes, they have one. It's part of religion's attempt not to recreate what happened in the Middle Ages, and to try and get more alongside the scientific community and incorporate science into religion. In May 2008, Jose Gabriel Funes gave an interview, and he made this quote. And I don't often read my slides, but I think I will just read this onto the record. "This is not in contradiction with our faith, because we cannot establish limits to God's creative freedom.